Welcome to the Fighting on Film podcast, the podcast all about classic and obscure war movies, from the Normandy landings to the days of chivalry and swords. If it's been captured on film, we're going to try and cover it. I'm Robbie of RM Military History.
I'm Matthew Moss of Historical Firearms and the Armourer's Bench. Hello and welcome back to Fighting on Film. This week we are tackling the Steel Bayonet, which was chosen by our fabulous patrons, the supporting cast. And it's a Leo Genn-led picture from 1957. And I'm going to say it right now, I thoroughly enjoyed this. What did you think of it?
It's fabulous. I mean, coming off last week with the Rebels of PT 218, I mean, we had some great feedback from it, some really funny feedback from it. We're really pleased everyone sort of understood what we were going for with that episode. But no, this one is we're back to, I call it like fighting on film bread and butter, you know, like the proper 50s era classic.
Mildly obscure war movies.
Yeah, you know, but this feels like it's almost a forgotten gem in the way that Nine Men is a forgotten classic. I think Steel Bayonet needs a little bit of revisionism put onto it. Do you know what I mean by that?
Revitalized and brought back into
that's it, revitalization. That's the word. Sorry. Yeah.
I know, I completely agree with you. I agree. I'd never seen it before
I'd never heard of it.
We watched it a few months ago and we were like, oh, this looks good.
Because Talking Pictures TV in the UK put it on a few months ago.
A couple of weeks ago. Yeah.
Yeah. And it was, I mean, gosh, it was fantastic, wasn't it?
It was lovely to see it in a decent resolution.
Yeah.
There's a naughty rip of it online.
It's not the best.
It's fuzzy as hell and the audio's out of sync. So I was like, I'm going to buy it on DVD. So I bought it on DVD and I watched it. And I was like, Rob, if you couldn't get past the fuzziness of the naughty online version, then the DVD rip.
Hunt out the extremely rare, hard to find DVD edition that you got. Exactly. Yeah.
It was worth it though because it looks great. Audio's in sync. And you can enjoy the film for the film, not be sat there going, what's going on here?
Who's talking now? Yeah, because the audio is slightly out of sync. Yeah,
exactly.
It's annoying.
But when Talking Pictures put it on, it was just fabulous to have it on a TV channel where everyone could watch it. And we said, go watch it because it's great.
And I remember at the time when it was out, I remember a lot of people were like, wow, I've never seen this before. This is great. And that's what we were like, thank you, Talking Pictures, because, you know, we have a little bit of email correspondence with them from time to time, but I think after this episode goes live, I'm going to lobby them and go, could you please put it on again so our listeners can watch it, because they put it on their Encore, their streaming service, and it was only on there for a week, so I'm not sure how their licensing works. I think they put the movie on twice on TV and then it was up online for a week. And they have a limited thing where they put it up for a week, and if they don't own the film up for or have it for a long period of time, they put it up there for a bit and then take it down. And it was just nice to see on TV. But I can only thank the patrons for picking Steel Bayonet. Thank you so much.
It was almost going to become a bit of a hornblower.
It was getting there. I think you put it up for, was it like 4 months running?
I think it was 3. I don't think it was quite as bad as Hornblower.
Because you've had the DVD for a while. I know you have, for at least a year actually.
Wow, is it that long?
Yeah, you've been sitting on it for a while. I know you have. Because Matt's been holding it over my head that I wasn't able to watch it. So I was like, you bastard. And then when it came on Talking Pics, I was like, I can watch it now. So I think without further ado, shall we get into production and cast?
Yeah, before we go into that, I mean, let's just give everyone a little bit of an idea of what it's about if they didn't catch it on TV, because it is fairly obscure and not very widely known.
No.
So it's a really interesting picture in that it tells the story of just regular British infantry. It's not men on a mission. Yep. It's not LRDG. It's not, desert commandos and all this sort of thing. It's not straight out of a commando comic. It's a straightforward company of infantry holding an observation post. Big set piece battle at the end, which goes on for like 20 minutes.
Yeah, big set piece battle.
And it's straightforward, but there's lots of nice interpersonal stuff and lots of really good little details, which we'll come into when we talk about in the alley tally, etc. But yeah, let's go into it. Do you want to cover production, and I'll Hit
Of
cast.
course. Yeah. So this week, production. So it's a Hammer Films production. They're known, obviously, for their horror movies here in the UK, but they also produced a few war films in the 50s. The others being, covered it a few months back, Yesterday's Enemy with Stanley Baker. It's one of my personal favourites. It's an absolutely phenomenal film if you've never seen it. And then they did the Camp on Blood Island the year before, or 2 years before.
Yeah, the controversial.
Very controversial film, and it really sort of rustled feathers here in the UK. So the film was originally called The Observation Post, but it was changed to The Steel Bayonet in November of 1956. And it was directed and produced by Michael Carreras, and he's the son of Hammer founder James Carreras. And he'd acted as a producer on The Curse of Frankenstein and Dracula, directed a film. It was a bit like a sort of like a spy Cold War film called Passport to China in 1960 and Curse of the Mummy's Tomb. But The Steel Bayonet was his first directorial feature, and he apparently wanted to avoid the British war film tropes at the time that, in his own words, had a tendency for understatement. So this film comes out, you've got The Cruel Sea, The Dam Busters, all these types of films that are coming out in this era. So he felt like this film was a sort of an affront to all that. This was going to be the bombastic American type style combat movie. I read that he wanted it to mirror sort of American 50s war movies rather than British ones. But it was written by Howard Clews, and he wrote the one that got away in 1957, the Hardy Kruger starring role prisoner of war film. And he also wrote 1965's Up from the Beach that starred Cliff Robertson. And talking of dodgy VHS rips, there's another dodgy VHS rip of that online, and that might be actually worse than the Steel Bayonets. It's one that Woody always says is a really good D-Day movie, but there is no good copy of it. So that's another one to seek out if you're a completionist, I guess, on D-Day films. So the cinematography is by Jack Asher, and he's a longtime Hammer film collaborator. He worked on Dracula, Curse of Frankenstein, and his war film work includes 1956's Reach for the Sky, Camp on Blood Island, Albert RN, and The Scarlet Blade, which is one of the very few.
Albert RN.
Yeah. But The Scarlet Blade, interesting enough, is one of the few English Civil War films, which I thought was interesting.
Is that the one from the 70s?
Yes, it's got Oliver Reed in it.
Yes, I've seen that one.
Is it good?
There are not many. It just looks Hammer cheap.
Bit of a swashbuckler.
There's a little bit of that in there. There's another one. There's a couple. There's a Vincent Price, I think, a Hammer movie, which is like Witchfinder General, which is set around the Civil War as well. But yeah, you're right.
There's Oliver Cromwell as well with Richard Todd.
With Harris. Yeah.
And then there was Richard Harris. Sorry. And then there's a Field in England that
I'm just picturing like Richard Todd like stood in Parliament with his hands on his hips, giving the birds have flown the coop, the nest, or whatever it was.
Brilliant, wasn't it?
But yeah, exactly. A Field in England too. There's really not many English Civil War movies.
Considering how important that war is to our history, it's incredible how little it's
basis of the constitutional monarchy and such.
It's not really bled into pop culture that much, as maybe as it should. Anyway, moving on. Released in the UK, Steel Bayonet, in 1957 and in 1958 in America by United Artists, and as a double bill with a film called Fort Massacre. And it was shot in the summer.
Yeah, that's a Western.
Yeah, it's like one of those cavalry troops get besieged type movie.
Yeah. There's a rich seam of those, definitely.
There's loads of them in there. Yeah. So this one was shot in the summer of 1956, and it was filmed on Salisbury Plain. And supposedly
Salisbury Plain. I thought it was Tunisia.
Yeah, you'd be hard pressed. It looks really good.
It does look pretty good, actually.
But supposedly the War Department were meant to supply the film with tanks, but they couldn't because of the Suez Crisis. So 4 Cromwell tanks were bought from a scrap dealer, and they stand in for Panzers.
I love that. Yeah, they've got the little the crosses painted on the side.
They do. I mean, squint, they could look a little bit like a tiger, I guess.
Or a Panzer IV.
Panzer IV at a glance, yeah. But I think it's just interesting that we don't think that the Suez Crisis would have affected the film, but it did. It's quite interesting.
Like the British Army couldn't spare a troop of tanks.
Couldn't spare a couple of centurions. I'm pretty sure not all of the centurions of the entirety of the British Army were sent to Suez. Perhaps they were. I doubt it. Anyway, But we have a retro review this week, and it is from Josh Billings of the Cinematography Weekly from Thursday, the 16th of May, 1957. And he writes, war melodrama describing gallant stand of battle-weary English infantry company against Afrika Korps advance party. Characterization quite good, and final combat scenes exciting, but direction uneven. Sentiment phony, feminine appeal negligible. And then he gives it a little sort of rating, and he says ticklish booking. He gives it a C on the ABCDEF chart.
Okay, so it's a middling review then.
Middling. Yeah, he says middling. And then we had your one-word reviews. And this week we had World War II TV. Woody, he said, oh, addertastic. Rob Shipman said pointy. Gary Patterson said sandy. Historical firearms. I don't know who that is. Never heard of him, Matt. He said cravat.
He's got opinions, I'll tell you that.
Yeah, he does. Yeah, you said cravat, and we Stephen O'Neill says enjoyable.
I think that covers it, really, doesn't it? They're all the key elements of this film: the cravat, the ladder, the bayonets.
Bayonets, yeah, it's good. It's good. So yeah, that was my production. It's obviously because it's just a little bit of a, as I say at the start, forgotten gem. There's not a lot out there production-wise. I mean, I had to trawl through a lot of Hammer history books to find anything of real merit there, and go onto the archives of the Cinematography Weekly and interviews with the cast. And then there's barely any interviews with the cast. I couldn't even find Leo Genn chatting about it.
Weird, isn't it?
And I was like, there's got to be more than this.
I wonder how it did at the box office.
I can't tell.
Because it seems like solid fare to me. Like I if I was around in 1957, I'd have beaten this up.
Afterwards, you get the controversy of Camp and Blood Island, and then you get Yes It Is Enemy, which is received quite well to a degree. So it's almost like this one is sort of the first one, and it's sort of like, it's Hammer's first attempt. Oh, it's okay. And then they come out with those other two movies, and this one's just fodder, maybe. It's just,
maybe
I don't know how to place it. Yeah, I don't know how to place it. Anyway, Matt, cast, please.
Well, what a cast we have. It's full of Hammer stalwarts. So there's names and faces you would recognize, and then there's some that are just kind of background actors that have been brought in to pad out the platoon and the company that's portrayed. And it works really well. There's some good performances in here. So as I said earlier, Leo Genn plays Major Alan Gerard. Leo Genn was actually in the Royal Artillery during the war. And some of his war films include, he was the narrator on Tunisian Victory, which I thought was really interesting. Nice little mirror there.
Nice little touch, isn't it?
And also on The Way Ahead as well. He played Major Snow. Yeah, that's true, actually.
He is, yeah.
He plays Major Snow in The Red Beret, Sergeant Kendall in No Time to Die, aka Tank Force, and Major General Hollander in The Longest Day. And of course, he played General Young Lu in 55 Days at Peking, which is not. Anyway.
Yeah.
Then we had Kieran Moore, who plays Captain Dickie Mead, who's the FOO, the Royal Artillery Forward Observer. And he was in 10 Tall Men in 1951, Conflict of Wings in 54, and then later in 64 he was in The Thin Red Line, the first version.
Ah, cool.
Michael Medwin plays Lieutenant Vernon, and if you've listened to our episode on A Hill in Korea, you'll remember that he was private docker in Hill in Korea in 56, which was the year before.
Fabulous.
He was also in Malta Story, The Waves Above Us, The Longest Day, and in 1980 he was in Seawolves.
No way.
So yeah.
Great.
So you've got quite a solid cast of officers there, and then the rest of the cast of the NCOs and enlisted men include Robert Brown as the company sergeant major, who played M between 1977 and 1989 in the Bond movies. He was in The Man Who Never
I'm
Was.
not a huge Bond fan, but that's amazing.
I know, and he was also in A Hill in Korea, and Sing the Bismarck, and Operation Crossbow. This is a peak film for British war movies.
Some good credits in there.
The cast.
Yeah.
Michael Ripper plays Private Middlewich, who's always trying to bring Leo Genn's character a cup of tea.
I love that. I love that throughout it.
That
it's
is
so good.
No standing till we've had our brew.
Oh, I've not heard that in ages on the pod.
I know. And this film is peak that vibe.
Yeah.
He was a mainstay of Hammer films, and he was also in Blood Island, as you mentioned earlier. John Paul plays the lieutenant colonel, the commander of the battalion that the company's dispatched from, and he was in Yangtze Incident, which we covered on the pod before. He was in Cromwell, which you mentioned earlier, Rob. He was in 1981's The Bunker as well.
Nice.
We've got Private Wentworth was played by Jack Stewart, who was in Captain Horatio Hornblower, RN, from 1951, which we've also covered on the pod. Another excellent Patreon pick, I have to say.
Yeah, yes, it was.
Bernard Horsall plays Private Livingston, who was in The One That Got Away with Hardy Kruger. Guns
nice
of Batazi.
Yeah,
I know. This film's full of them. And Shout at the Devil. And then we have, of course, perhaps most notably, Percy Herbert, who has a couple of speaking lines in this film. And if you've listened to us talk about any film with Percy Herbert in, you'll know he's been in almost, I don't know, a third of British war movies.
Yeah.
So I'm not going to go into listing them all, because
I feel like we should write an unofficial history of his career at this point.
I feel like we should have like a bit where we just insert me reading all of Percy Herbert's war movies that we can just pop into the cast whenever he pops into one.
A special Patreon stretch goal would be like you just reading out Percy Herbert's IMDb credits
with the sound of a crackling fire in the background.
Yeah. Credit corner with Matthew Boss.
Who else have we got? We've got Paddy Joyce, who plays the signaller for the Royal Artillery. He made his screen debut in The Cruel Sea in 1953. Another absolute classic.
Yeah.
Michael Balfour plays Private Thomas. He was in The Red Beret and The Sea Shall Not Have Them. So another of the two peak classics there. And then finally, Raymond Francis plays the general, who I believe visits to give the battalion, the company, orders at the beginning of the film. He was in Carrington VC, Above Us the Waves, Storm Over the Nile, Reach for the Sky, and Carve Their Name with Pride as well. And that rounds out cast. I felt like that went on for a long time, but I think it was worth it.
So before we jump off of cast, what do you think about the Michael Kane thing? You read about that?
No, what's that?
So apparently Michael Kane is an uncredited extra as one of the Germans in this.
I've heard that. I completely forgot about that. Is it this? Oh, is that this film?
It is this film. I went down a bit of a rabbit hole trying to find out if he'd ever mentioned it. I don't think he ever really has. I couldn't tell because there's so many Germans on screen at that end point.
There are a lot.
I'm not sure if they're running off of one bit of screen and coming round to make it look like there's loads of people. Not in that Dad's Army episode where they get the Italians to run around. I don't know if they're doing that. But it's like, if he's in there, I mean, you might have to get your magnifying glass out, but apparently he is. So I don't want to say for certain that he
whenever he talks in interviews about his first film, it's always...
He always says Helen Korea, doesn't he?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
And that's obviously one that stands out to him because he was a national serviceman in Korea. So
maybe. And if he's been an extra, I mean, maybe, I don't know.
Isn't there a grainy photograph of him in a German uniform?
No, there's not. Yeah, but that's another film.
Oh, I was having a Mandela effect moment.
It's a different film.
Right.
Yeah. But anyway, if anyone out there is a Kane super fan and you know that he's in this for certain, let us know. Because there was a few Michael Caine fan pages that were like, yep, he's an extra in this. And then I was like, how do you know that? And I couldn't quite pin it. So anyway, that's that not cleared up. We can move on. So, Ali Tally.
It's time for Ali Tally on Fighting on Film.
Straight in. Well, you know what I'm going to go for, don't you?
PIAT.
I think it's going to be the PIAT. Yeah.
Be the PIAT,
so I think this might actually be the first British on-screen portrayal of a PIAT.
No, you're wrong. No,
after. After.
All right.
Let me finish, Bob. After theirs is
you got it wrong, Matthew.
You've forgotten the film that we talk about all the time. What are you doing? No,
don't forget your final film law. How dare you?
I know. I
You're the
apologize.
fucking law creator.
So I think this is actually the second on-screen portrayal of the PIAT.
Yeah, I think you're right.
And it's the first that wasn't in British inventory, because they
true,
just took all the
Yeah.
weapons there with them. This was an under the radar one for me for a long time, and then when I was writing my book about it a few years ago, I was like, oh yeah, there's a mention of it there, and I hadn't seen the film at that point, so I wanted to see it, but I couldn't find it. As always on playing on film, some of these are quite obscure and they aren't always readily available.
No, they're not. They're very hard to find.
Apologies.
You put them on a wish list of films you want to cover.
But it's a blink and you'll miss it scene. It's during the final battle, and there's lots of firing and smoke with his mortars, and the Germans are coming in, and the Cromwell crests over the ridge, and the chap lines up the PIAT, and he's there, and his mate next to him's already been killed, sadly, and he fires the round off, hits the tank, is so shocked that he hit the tank, stands up and goes, "I got him," and immediately gets rinsed by a burst of MG34 fire.
He's one of the first lads to get killed as well.
Yeah, because that's when it all starts.
Like
it all
a
starts
domino
going a bit
effect.
wrong.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm. But I love the fact that it's in there. I love the fact that it's. I don't know where they got it from. They either got it from a film armour or the army had some on hand at Salisbury Plain.
Maybe that scrap dealer sold it.
Maybe.
Sold them the
Who
tanks.
knows? Yeah. I've got this PIAT as well. Do you want that to go with the tanks now?
Okay. Yeah. I'll chuck a PIAT in extra. Give me $5. Chuck a PIAT on there.
Because 57 is the very end of British PIAT use. So it goes out of service in the mid-50s. Still kind of.
Maybe the army were like, "Oh, we can't
in the armories.
We can't give you tanks, but we've got this nearly obsolete PIAT. Would you like it?"
But it's
some officers, some are going, "Well, I can't have our tanks because they're in Suez. They can have this PIAT."
But I like it though, because they've got the couple of PIAT bombs on the crest of the
nice,
slit trench they're in.
That's one of the strong points of this movie. When they're dug in, they are looking like they're actually dug in. They're not just dug in some hastily dug trenches sitting in there with rifles. That they've got their extra rounds on the lip of the trench, the slit trench. They've got bombs. They've got bandoliers. It's really like they've thought about it. It feels like they're in for not the long haul, but it feels there's some thought been put in. Yeah, they're ready. Yeah.
The only way this film could have been better is if Leo Genn had brought up the PIAT. That's the only way this film could have been better.
Genn on the PIAT. It's so cool.
We get him on everything else in this film.
Yeah. We get Genn on a Bren, Genn on a Tommy. We get Genn on a man portable radio.
Yeah.
Yeah. No, Leo Genn's just like man of the hour in this film.
He's great.
His Tommy gun firing stance is the most leaning into a weapon I've ever seen. It's
brilliant.
Fantastic.
I love it.
It's so good.
I'm going to talk about that in a minute. It's one of my favorite scenes.
Sure.
But the PIAT scene was great. It was lovely to see. Just a short little thing, but it was employed properly on screen and it looked good.
No, it did. It looked good, and it was used properly. It wasn't like there was no myth being created like it is in the Bridge Too Far and all that. It was just the PIAT being used for what the PIAT does.
Yeah,
it almost feels like, I don't know how you feel. You wrote a book on the thing, I know, but it almost feels like the PIAT is used for that certain amount of time and it's well respected and whatever. And then there's a period where it sort of gets forgotten about, and then obviously it comes in through film a lot more, and it just feels like we think we know more about the PIAT because of its use in film than we actually know of it for real.
I think that's probably true. I think you're right there. I think we covered it a little bit on our episode about the PIAT in film, but I think a lot of misconceptions come around from its depiction in Bridge Too Far, that it missed and it wasn't very useful and stuff like that. And then you have all those myths about it breaking shoulders and it not being very effective. And it's all sort of snowballs a little bit. And thankfully, there's a bit more interest in it now, and people are more open to going, oh, right, I didn't know that. And I've had loads of people say that, I had no idea it was actually quite an effective weapon. And it's nice to start having like conversations with people where they know that it wasn't actually useless. It's a nice surprise. Like I had a couple recently where they were like, I didn't mention that I'd been researching it and writing the book about it. We were just talking about World War II small arms, and then British PIAT comes up, and they didn't go down the whole trope of it. It was it was a piece of shit, but so that's
No,
always
exactly.
nice.
Yeah, and they don't play it off as like, oh, bring that PIAT, like, oh, it's just what we've it'll have to do, sort of thing. It's like, no,
Genn
it's
has
treated.
a lovely little line actually. I quite like that's quite weighty actually when you think about it.
Mhm.
Once the PIAT team gets knocked out, he's like, well, it's only the guns now, meaning the artillery that they're bringing in, that's holding the tanks off. Which I think is quite
Nice little line.
Yeah, because as a company commander, he understands the importance of an infantry anti-tank weapon.
Yeah, he does.
And it being so useful. But
So
we can't talk
talking
about PIATs for too long, so we
No, of
need to
course
move
not.
on.
I know. But coming off of an anti-tank weapon, we can talk about another anti-tank weapon, which is something that I really liked this week. So you have I forget the character's name. It's the guy that the young suppleton.
Vernon.
Vernon, sorry, yeah.
Yeah, Lieutenant Vernon.
Lieutenant Vernon. So just before the big battle, Genn knows they're going to get attacked. He could just feel it. He understands. He's like, well, we've held out for this long. Now they're going to definitely attack us. And he brings up Vernon and he goes, so what experience have you got with laying mines? And he goes, well, only on beaches, because he was on beach defence in the UK before he got sent overseas. And you get this lovely little sequence of Vernon and a couple of the other chaps laying mines.
Yeah.
And it's like, it's like, how many anti-tank mines can you lay tonight? He goes, what, about 2 fields worth or something? I'm paraphrasing, but it was so nice to see them dig the holes. You got a guy covering him, arming I think they are Mark V general service mines, which is like an anti-tank mine.
Right.
I think that's what they are, because you see them. Quote me if I'm wrong, guys, but it's just lovely to see it, because you see them defending their positions, and they're not just digging trenches, they're actually digging mines, and then the mines are actually, you see them go off when the tanks come in. It's really nice. And then it's all
there's always scenes where people are digging mines up and prodding through minefields.
Nice. It's really good.
But there's very rarely do you see them actually getting deployed.
It's a proper defensively. I know it's a Last Stand film, but they think about it way more than some of these Last Stand.
I knew there was a reason why I liked this.
Yeah. It's like Matt's favourite subgenre within the genre, Last Stand movies. This is another one that we love. It's very Nine Men. I say it now, if we haven't said it yet. It's very Nine Men, and that's why we like it. But it's the other little things that I really love. So you got a lot of good British kit on display, 37 pattern webbing, KD
over woolly pulleys.
Yeah,
love it.
Khaki drill uniforms, and then the guys put on battle dress jackets in the evening. You got Leo Genn's absolutely cool as carrots. I don't know how any more I can give praise to it, but his leather overcoat.
Yeah, he's such his little leather overcoat. I'm just going to shout out now to his peak cravat wearing in this film. Nice. He wears at least 2 or 3 variations.
He's got like a couple. Yeah, it's so nice.
And he's rocking that cravat.
He really.
I felt like I needed to go out and buy one after I watched this film.
Yeah. And then we've got the Bren again. Gets another little sequence where you've got the old salt teaching a new recruit or a newer soldier.
I like that. Yeah.
About, okay, I know how to use the Bren. No, you don't. This Bren's different. I'm going to teach you all about this Bren in particular. And it feels like he's like nursed this Bren from the armory, but took it all the way through the Tunisian campaign. But then they talk about the gas escape, and how it's like, if you don't wet the ground in front of the gas escape, you get dust in your face when it fires. And I don't know how true
there's a level of detail to this film I really love.
Yeah.
Like, if you look closely on,
but is that right?
It is right. No, well, right. They do kick up dust to the front, and from muzzle blast as well.
Mm-hmm.
But there's a level of detail to this film that I really love. Just staying on the Bren for a second, like the number 2 is putting mags in. Love it.
Oh, so good.
It's one of the few films you see it happening. And it's what would have been done, and it just looks right.
That's the thing that Carreras said in some notes I was reading. He said he cast the men that he cast because he knew they'd been soldiers, so he wouldn't have to put any additional work into teaching them how to be soldiers.
Right.
So I think that's where maybe this realism thing comes in. You've got Genn, who's an artillery observer, playing a man who is looking after artillery observers.
Yeah.
So he's going to know his bit. I'm pretty sure some of those guys in those trenches were serving. They'd have to have been because of the era. So I can understand it. But yeah, no, you're right. The detail is something. It's really nice.
Did you notice the branch of service strips?
No, I didn't.
Above the on their shoulders. You don't see
nice.
Those on BD in films very often.
You don't.
Just really small detail.
Yeah.
The German uniform's not as good.
No,
but that's forgivable because they've got a lot of extras in there. So they're all on with like World War One era Gewehr 98s rather than K98Ks. Yeah, the much longer rifles, and they're all wearing like the 1916 style helm, I think it is. A World War One style helm. Let's put it that way.
They've got you can tell they've got the grey like 1940 type uniforms, not Africa Corps uniforms.
And they've got the classic khaki trousers on. Yeah.
That's a war movie trope in itself. Like German,
it is actually
troops not dressing like German troops would dress. Like that. I don't think that got like properly addressed until the 90s. I would want to say
episode 500 of Fighting on Film. These are the top 5 war movies where Germans are wearing the wrong kit.
But no, I know what you mean. But I was going to ask you a question. So there's only a few movies that do it, to my knowledge. I think Cromwell tanks are a much better stand-in for Panzers and Tigers than what it's traditionally stands in for.
Yeah, if it'd been a Centurion, I don't think it would have looked right.
No, it wouldn't.
It would have been cool.
It would have been amazing to see a Senti.
They're big tanks. They are big, and they don't look particularly World War II, and they don't look particularly German. No, whereas a Cromwell is boxy enough to look a little bit like a Tiger if you swim.
At a distance, when they come over the crest, you're like, rather. Yeah, and you could have put a little bit more effort in. You could have slanted with a bit of work. You could have slanted put a bit of metal on the turret and slanted it a little bit.
Oh yeah, on the mantle and stuff. Yeah.
But I think they do I think they do a better job. Just out of
No, I agree. I think they look fairly decent. I agree. I think it's better than using a Patton tank or a Bulldog or a Leopard 1. I think all those later tanks that just look a little bit wrong.
They're too out of place. They don't look Second World War enough. Yeah. I think this is what helps it. Anyway, and then we couldn't leave the alley tally this week without talking about the 25 pounders because they're integral to the plot.
Yeah. And I really love the detail they went into. So they show the observation officer up in the tower because the farm that they're defending has a tower, which is handy. And probably would have been an obvious target for any German advancing force. And anyway, they would have gone cleared that, I would imagine. So the whole point of them keeping quiet and not letting the Germans know they're there is until the last possible second is probably a bit mute. They would have gone there anyway. It's such a good position. The German general at the end decides to make it his HQ. Yes. But the 25 pounder action is lovely. So you get a battery of 25 pounders. In the film, they talk about, you'll have a regiment on hand, which is, plausible because that observation point's great because there's a nice bit of like matte painting and bit of model workish type scene.
Nice.
Where in the distance you see the Africa Corps advancing like left to right across the screen.
They're doing their absolute hammer, doing their absolute best with the budget they've got. I couldn't find the budget, but I knew it's not huge, but they do a really good job of what they've got.
Agree. The scale of it's really good. The number of Germans that attack the position, spot on. Really great.
It's loads.
That feels like a battalion-sized attack. It does. It really does.
Yeah.
This is the 25 pounders are great because you get a little bit with the battery commanders stood there with a microphone and he's giving orders to the gun crews.
So good.
And a lot of the commands given over the radio, like 3 rounds gunfire, that kind of thing, and he's relaying back the full shot. Just really, it's. I've never actually seen that on film.
No,
any artillery.
If you're an artillery fan, this one's for you.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah,
you never get the level of detail that they show in this of how like there's a forward observer that tells the battery
And
miles
they show
away.
the shots drop in, and he says,
Yeah.
okay, now adjust. You fired your
Mhm.
ranging shot. Now you can adjust and fire another ranging shot. Oh no, that's perfect. And then drop more rounds onto target.
Exactly.
Really nice. And you obviously get just the sequences of a 25-pounder battery going off that isn't stock footage.
Yeah.
That's
they've
really
they've
nice.
clearly done it on Salisbury Plain, haven't they?
They've just gone, can we come and film the 25-pounder battery crews practicing, please? Yeah, okay then. It's just like, it's great, stick them in KDs, fab. What more do you want?
The end of the film, a bit of a spoiler here, is the Germans take over the farm, and Leo Genn's the last man on the ground. He's been wounded. He's the tower's actually collapsed on him.
Yeah.
Absolute.
After he was being Genn on the Bren and giving it some. Holding
unit in this film.
The
Like,
Germans
nothing can kill him.
Unit. No one's ever called Leo Genn a unit before. That was a brand new sentence right there.
Oh, that's true. That is true. And he calls in like fire mission on his position.
Give him all your gut.
Yeah, it's so good. But yeah, then you get like 40 seconds of just 25-pounders laying it on.
Kane in this back.
And then a really nice little bit of, is it model work or is it actually like a farm getting pelted?
I think they blow fuck out of that set,
Yeah, I think they do. Yeah, because it looks really good. But yeah, the 25-pounders, the 25-pounders were almost like the tanks coming over the hill in 9 Men for me. I was like, ooh, okay.
Yeah. It's not quite, grown men didn't quite cry like they did when those Crusaders come over the hill in 9 Men. But no, it's good. It's really good. And then before we move on quickly, there is a sole universal carrier, which is lovely to see. And all the lads bundle on it at the end. And you can tell the suspension is like really trying to keep them up. It's really good. The proper bowing. Not bowing, but I guess low.
Yeah. Are they Bedfords at the beginning of the film?
I was about to say, yeah. And then we're at Bedford MWs. Which was
not only have we had a mention of not standing to until we've had a brew, but we're also getting beddies.
Vernon gets delivered on a beddy, which was absolutely great. I thought, Leo DiCaprio meme, Bedford, a 50s war movie,
beddy full of anti-tank mines.
A 50s war movie with like someone of the prestige of Leo Genn with a beddy in it and a universal carrier. And a PIAT. I mean, it's like, if it's FOF bingo, I might have to do a bingo card. If it's like FOF bingo, that's up there, isn't it?
There's a Venn diagram somewhere in that.
Yeah.
There's a Genn diagram in there somewhere.
Genn diagram. So many potential final film Christmas t-shirts coming up this year.
Yeah, I know, right?
Moving on to favourite scenes. My favourite scene this week, it's before the main battle, even though that main battle is really bombastic and in your face.
20 minutes worth.
Yeah, a long old battle. But the film sets out its tone quite early. So as they go into the observation post, Leo Genn says, look, I won't have any firing when you go on patrol. You want to take the Germans. If you come across any Germans, take them out silently. Because I don't want them to know how many people are here. Or if they know we're here, the game's up already and we're going to get overrun really quickly. So he sends out the lads and they come across a patrol and they take them out silently with bayonets and knives and clubs. But that sequence is really visceral. It's like 9 Men when you're not expecting. So I wasn't expecting a 1943 film to be that brutal, but I'm still not expecting. And I don't know why. I don't know if it's a cultural thing or if it's a pop culture thing. I don't know. But I'm not expecting a 1957 movie to be as violent as some of these movies get, just because I don't associate that era with like brutal, violent films. I know they existed, but I just don't expect to see it. So
I know. Yeah, I know exactly what you mean.
You know what I'm getting at.
Especially not in that ilk of British war movies.
Yeah, exactly. So you see bayonets going into people getting hit over the head, quite
lingering shots,
people really getting up close and personal, killing other men. And that sequence pans away and fades out to like a road, a sunken road with like dead Germans in it, and the men walking away who've killed them. And you get this German crying out "Mutti," which is the German for mother. and it's like Muti, and it fades, and it's like, wow, okay, that's your tone, is it? You're treating war as brutal. You're not treating it as some jingoistic adventure. You're actually treating it with a little bit more respect. I know it's not out of place, but okay, well done. And I really like how they dealt with the hand-to-hand combat. It feels visceral, feels brutal. And then at the end, you get the sergeant. He engages hand-to-hand while he's holding off the men, letting the men retreat. And he's holding them off, and you get quite a brutal hand-to-hand bayonet fighting sequence. And then he just marches off into the smoke with bayonet fixed, and it's implied that he goes down in a hail of machine gun fire.
Yeah, there's a burst of fire, isn't there? And it's not all one-sided either, because in that battle sequence, obviously, the British can't hold out forever. It's a company of 32 men.
Yeah, and they're under strength.
Under strength.
At the start, it says, look, they're already under strength, and they're already really battle weary.
Yeah. It's one of those, hold to the last man, last round sort of classic.
They're told that, aren't they? They're told that by the CEO.
Yeah, it's explicitly said.
Yeah.
And when they start getting overrun, you see a couple of guys go hand to hand, and in a lot of war movies of that period, you'll see the good guys always, they're always the ones that come out on top in a one-on-one bayonet fight.
Yep.
But not in this film. Like there's a balance, and you see the Tommies are going down in hand-to-hand fighting, and not only is it the mortar fire that's coming in and the small arms fire, but it's brutal. And as you said, I think that the final sequence is one of my favorites because of that level of gritty, visceral realism.
Yes.
Of
as much as a 50s movie can get.
Yeah. Oh yeah. Yeah. I mean, I'll talk about this in a second, but it is balanced in a 50s way. Yes. So with that final sequence, which I think it's probably one of our favorite scenes, it has to be.
Yeah, it's good.
20 minutes worth of British infantry going head on head with Afrika Korps. What's not to like?
Yeah. Short magazine Enfields. Yeah. Bolts going hammer for leather. Sanderson bayonets. It's just peak. It's just peak. British Army.
M1928 Thompsons. Bren's.
Genns.
Bren's and Genns. But that level of visceralness and the way it's shot for a first-time director is very impressive, I think. The cinematography on this is actually really subtly brilliant, I think. There's a lot of shots that dolly shots. It must be a dolly shot that sort of moves along the battlefield, and it shows you different positions.
Yeah, you get a good sense of scale.
Absolutely. There's some really nice close-ups and mid-shots of them grappling with one another. And the little sequences where there's two men in the slit trench and one gets killed, and there's a couple of scenes where the chap will look over, not say anything, just acknowledge that his mate's dead next to him.
Yeah.
I think that they're solid scenes. There's the bit where the Bren gunner gets killed and his number two cries a little bit.
He cracks, doesn't he?
He does, because he's a this is his first,
big battle is implied. Yeah.
But there's a lot to be said for it. It does work really, really well. But I think,
what's your favorite scene?
As you picked a small one as well, I think my smaller piece within the film is where Leo Genn goes out to silence a German sniper that's a survivor from the patrol that they kill in that first sequence. He's firing on the tower and keeping the FOO's head down. So Leo Genn goes out with he tells his Batman to go and get me a Tommy gun. His Batman jogs off and comes back with a Tommy gun. And the Sergeant Major's like, let me go out, sir. I'm a better shot anyway. And Leo Genn goes, no, this is my job.
No, I'm doing
bunny hops over a wall off into the...
Sorry, Batman. I think you forgot I'm the star of this picture. I've got a plot woolly pulley on. I'll be fine.
And my plot cravat is perfectly placed for this.
Just see the Car 98 rounds picking off the cravat like Wonder Woman.
Disappears into the desert. Finds the German, Gemma spots him, gives him like 5 rounds rapid out of his bolt action rifle. Leo again, I think he dodges a grenade that the chap throws at him.
He does.
And then he gives him a burst. And then he gets a bit closer and gives him another burst.
Yeah.
And it's
point
like,
shooting. It's on.
Yeah,
it's
it's like right from the hip.
Yeah.
And it's like, oh, Leo, like this is quite action man-y.
Quite the action
like
star for Leo Genn.
Yeah. So that one stands out for me. I like the he went 1-on-1 with her.
Well, it shows he's not afraid to get in and mix it up with his men. I like that. Yeah. I'm going to talk about how much I love his character in this in a minute, actually. Yeah. But what's your favourite scene properly?
I think that's it. I think that is. I think that scene with Genn on the Thompson, and then I love the whole battle, but I think Genn on a Bren, it's got to be Genn on a Bren, hasn't it, really?
It's good.
I mean,
yeah.
He tells his men to get out. What's left of them is probably like a section worth at the end of the film. They hop onto the carrier.
They're dropping like flies at this point, aren't they? Yeah.
This poor Batman comes out with a message and a cup of tea. He's like, cup of tea, sir. Gets killed by a mortar round.
Yeah.
That poor man is like, throughout the whole film, it's like kind of like a running joke where he's always got a brew on the go. He's like, sugary cup of tea, sir.
Yeah.
And Leo Genn's like, get out.
Get out.
Like,
just leave.
Like, get away. Like half the time he's like, and then he takes it off and he grudgingly
I'm
drinks
surprised like some tea company hasn't lampooned these scenes for like an advert, you know.
Well, there's a bit where Middlewich, who's his Batman, goes, a man can't be expected to fight a war without a cup of tea.
Yeah. That is a better scene than almost a better scene than the Sean Connery tea scene in Bridge Too Far.
It kind of is.
Tea in war film supercut.
Oh my God. Episode 501, fighting on film, tea in war movies.
You and me,
then we'll finally make the no stand to before we've had a brew tea.
You and me are in the movie podcast retirement home. Like, and I'll tell you one thing about all the tea scenes in war movies. Did I ever tell you about all the time that I saw tea in war films? Oh,
at that point, episodes are 6 hours long because
Robbie's not taking his pills, everyone.
Hello, I'm Al Murray, and you're listening to Fighting on Film, the world's #1 war film podcast.
Final thoughts?
For me, it was just a really pleasant surprise to find another straight down the line, not a Commando-esque men on a mission movie about North Africa, where you get it a little bit with Desert Rats and you get it a little bit with The Way Ahead, etc. But you're getting and Nine Men, of course. Yeah. But you're getting a very straightforward British infantry in a last stand situation, and you know I'm a bugger. I love that kind of stuff. I love that kind of yeah.
It makes for strong war movies because
it does.
Like,
it's simple. You know what's going on. Yeah. But it's a very tidy British war movie, I think. And it's kind of unjustly forgotten. And as you've already alluded to, it's unsurprisingly visceral for Hammer, actually.
Well, yeah, exactly. We haven't said that all the way through, actually. I should have said that when I was talking about the bayonet fighting. If you actually think of Hammer's productions, their horror films are their thing. So we shouldn't really be surprised. And then what they do with the Camp on Blood Island either, we shouldn't be surprised, really. But maybe because this is their first foray into war movies, maybe not looking at it from fresh eyes, maybe not sure how they treat war, but, that they do it this way is quite bold, shall we say?
Yeah, I think that's fair.
I
think Steel Bayonet's everything you want it to be. It's like 9 Men on a bigger scale.
Yeah, it's 9 Men with a bigger budget, put in my notes. Yeah. Feels like that anyway.
And it's got a PIAT.
It's got a PIAT.
Which, and people might go, well, PIATs went in North Africa, and that's right, they went for the most part, but they were in Tunisia. Tunisia was the first time the PIATs were used in action.
And you can learn more about the PIAT by buying Matthew Moss's book, The
PIAT bookshops
by Osprey.
Historicalfirearms.info /shop. But I think 9 Men obviously has the edge because it's a much earlier film. It's got all the interesting connotations of it being.
I put it straight on a par with
growing.
Nine Men.
Okay, that's fair.
I would put it straight on a par because, as I put in my notes, it's well paced. I think Leo again it peaks here. I think this is his greatest role. I'll talk about it in a minute. The film flies by as well. I'd never felt like
it's very well paced, actually.
Yeah, and it stands out from other British war films at the time just because it's a pure British combat film. And there aren't many of those, really. When you look back, most British war movies of that time are recreations of a book that's doing the rounds, is really popular, or of a genuine campaign. So like Dunkirk or The Cruel Sea.
Not that that's a bad thing, but I know what you mean.
No, not that that's a bad thing. This one just goes out of its way to be like, right, this is a company of guys, as you said at the start, their job is to defend this place. This is what happened. It's exactly 9 Men. It is 9 Men. The plot is exactly the same. It's just told in a different way. You know, here's something, we've got to defend this area, and there was only a few of us. That's 9 Men's plot, and this is Steel Bayonet's plot. And they are really solid movies. I think it's a shame in the scheme of Hammer films that it's overshadowed by Yesterday's Enemy and Camp on Blood Island.
Yeah, it's a shame they didn't make more like this.
No, it is. Yeah, but I think maybe those two films maybe sort of made it hard maybe for them to make more movies.
Probably.
Perhaps, I don't know. Or maybe it was just there was more money in cheap horrors. Who knows?
Well, that certainly came the case, didn't it? I think one thing I would say is that it has a scale that you don't expect.
No, yeah, they went all
from
in.
Either a horror movie, a Hammer horror movie, or Hammer Films movie, or a British war movie of the period. It has a scale that you don't expect. It's just a solid film, I think.
I think it's one of Leo Genn's finest performances. I mean, he was born to play the officer class, and he does it so well. He's got a voice, he's got a voice that you could spread on butter. It's just one of them. It's one of them.
No wonder he got so much narrator work.
Oh yeah, it's one of them accents, isn't it? I love his cravat, his overcoat. It's just enough character there to show you there's something more. I've got in my notes. He's almost like a land-based version of Captain Erickson from The Cruel Sea. He sympathizes with his men, but he knows there's a job that needs to be done.
Absolutely.
He's forceful but not strict, if you know what I mean.
Yeah.
And then it's the way he treats his other officers. So there's an argument when Vernon is upset when it seems that he's not being taken as seriously as the other officers, and how a medic is treating a wounded German. Leo Genn says back to him, the curious thing about war is that it brings out the best and worst of us both at once. The worst is what we're fighting against, and the best is what makes it almost worthwhile. It's just like, that is a really good line. There's a lot to unpack.
It is, yeah. It comes out of nowhere, and I like you spot on about that relationship with Vernon, because Vernon's the naive and experienced subaltern, and then Genn is that grizzled field officer that's been a company commander.
Yeah,
probably from.
And he's realistic about the situation.
He is, yeah,
as well.
And he's a good commander as well. He knows what he's doing, because when he deals with Vernon, because Vernon says he wants to put him for a transfer to another company. Yes, and it's the CO comes and visits when he brings up those anti-tank mines. And he again suggests, well, why don't you put it to Vernon, give him the choice, and then it's up to him whether he wants to abandon us, or something like that, something close to that. That shows that there's a nuance to the character, that he's an experienced man that knows how to lead. Yeah, and they give him a lot of depth.
They
actually,
do.
when you consider it, because there's some context of his character with he's divorced because his wife ran off with another man earlier in the war. He's grizzled because he's been in it since the beginning of the North Africa campaign.
And doesn't he mention like having nothing to go back to anyway?
He does. He does a little bit. Yeah. There's one bit where I think his Batman asks, "You're not married, are you, sir?" And he goes, "No, I've got enough trouble."
I've got enough trouble. That's it. Yeah, I love it.
Something like that.
And I just like the realism he has with all of what's going on. He knows that it's the last round affair. He's not trying to. Yeah. He's not pumping up the men, going, "Oh, don't worry, boys, we'll all get out," and it's all plucky Brits. Ha ha ha. He's a realist, and he says the farm will cease to exist by dawn. We're all in the same boat. Don't look to me for a stream of beautiful thoughts. Any I had went astray a long time ago. I'm moved by mean, no ideals.
Yeah,
Yeah,
that's it.
It's like fab. It's great writing, but also the character is just really a good representation of an officer. It's not the clipped, stiff upper lip type officer. He's very
no, and it's not Niven in Way Ahead either.
No, it's not. No,
it's not like Niven in The Way Ahead is likable. Yes. He's also a very capable officer. And he has quips on, ready to go when needed and stuff like that. Whereas
that's
this
a very
character,
like propaganda type, caricature of an officer. Whereas this is more of a human representation of an officer under the stress of combat. And I really, that's another thing I appreciate this movie for, is that it shows the officer class as being just as human and having wants and a life other than. It's just rare sometimes.
I think the film is surprisingly well written when you consider it. And we've talked about Genn and his character there, but there's also some really nice little scenes. There's a scene with, I can't remember who it's with, but it's Percy Herbert and the other man in his slit trench. And throughout the film, he's kind of mentioning that it's a chap that's on the Bren, because
I forget his name.
Percy Herbert gets switched out. Anyway, the Bren number one is constantly suggesting to Percy Herbert that they should desert and hitchhike to the local bazaar and then just disappear. And Herbert's like, that's not practical. That's not going to work.
Yeah.
And it's just this little bit of continual banter that they've got. But there's some good lines from a lot of the actual cast.
There is. Yeah,
they're all capable, and there's some funny bits, and then there's some bits that there's a tea waller that is like following them, that is introduced at the beginning of the film, and he's then seen running after the universal carrier
at the end.
He obviously had a scene in the middle somewhere, probably, and it got cut.
Maybe he's just there for comic relief, perhaps.
Yeah.
But it's just such a strong film, and you can see the nucleus of Yesterday's Enemy in there at points, with the writing and the way that combat is shown. And you could it's just a rarity in the British war movies of the 50s, I think.
It is. As I said earlier, it's a solid film.
Solid film. And we really hope that Talking Pictures TV show it again, because it needs to be seen a lot more, and I think it might be in their repertoire.
And I hope someone releases it on a
please, release it on DVD.
Widespread DVD release. That'd be fabulous.
I'm definitely going to email Talking Pics and be like, can you put it on again, please? I'd love to see it again. Can you keep it up on Encore for longer so we can all enjoy it?
We need more Genn on a Bren. That's what we need.
We need more Genn on a Bren. Yeah, everyone. So yeah, I mean, if you haven't worked out, we implore you, please go find this movie, even if you have to watch the less than perfect version out there online.
Fighting on Film does not endorse this opinion.
Well, no. So thanks for listening once again, and thank you to our patrons for choosing that film for us, because we don't thank them enough on the show.
We love all our listeners, but yes, I mean, Patreon is a great way to get involved and help us pick a movie once a month, and we obviously have a lot of other cool perks on there, so do check it out if you'd like to.
Yeah, help us keep the mics on here and the recording tape rolling, I guess. It'd be lovely if you could. So as always, follow us on the socials. You've got to follow us on Twitter, Facebook. Matt uploads the videos of this pod to YouTube. And you've got us on TikTok as well. Just type in Fighting on Film. I'm sure you'll find us on all the platforms there. And Instagram now, yeah. And on fightingonfilm.com, we can find the entirety of the back catalogue. Don't forget, you can find us on Apple Pods as well. And please do leave us a review and rating on there. It really helps the podcast grow. And we'll catch you next week when we have a little bit of a FOF exclusive. We're going to be reviewing the new Wolves of War film that stars Ed Westwick and Matthew Willis out of Busted. Do you remember him, Matt?
Oh, God, yeah, of course it does, yeah.
Yeah, and Rupert Graves.
Rupert Graves,
yeah. We were kindly sent a screener by the production
Exciting
company.
Times.
Yeah, so look out for that one next week when we'll give you our sort of first-hand review on that one. So thanks, everybody, and we'll catch you next week.
Thanks for listening. Bye.
Bye.